Welcome. Uh, this is the fourth annual Firstborn and More Home Visiting Symposium. And my name is Maya Larsgaard. I'm the training manager for Firstborn and More, a promising home visiting model that is growing by leaps and bounds. We are so happy to be able to offer this 3-day virtual symposium to all home visitors and early interventionists in the state without cost. And I want to thank the Brindle Foundation and Mary Nell Wegner. I'm not sure if you're here, Mary Nell, but sometimes you are, for the generous grant to Firstborn and More that's supporting this work. And a big thank you to Naomi Chadres and Amparo Duran for being here to do Spanish interpretation. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, who's going to be with us for all 3 workshops, Mara Brenner. And Mara is a national educator, trainer, consultant. She has decades of experience in the fields of early childhood education and early childhood psychology. She's worked as a child psychotherapist in special education, in early intervention, in therapeutic preschools, and in private practice, providing child guidance for parents and professional development training and reflective practice and consultation and supervision. She is multi-talented, and the feedback from the workshops that she did for us in November was overwhelmingly positive. So for this symposium, she'll be focusing on understanding adult behavior in the families you work with, in your colleagues, even in yourself. So welcome, Mara, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maya. Can you hear me okay, Maya? I'm listening to this introduction and it makes me just feel really old. That's like when you describe that, I just feel really old, like I've been around for a really long time. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you all. And I'm seeing, before I pull up my PowerPoint, I'm seeing lots of familiar faces. Some of you I've been texting as I saw you roll in. So it's really nice to be here with people I know and care for and respect. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to just check with Maya that you see that one slide. Great. So I'm going to just encourage people, if you don't already, to grab a piece of paper and a pen while we're together for these next couple hours. And not only for you, if you want to jot down some concepts that you want to hold on to, but I'm also going to be offering some reflections throughout that I want you to be able to have something to write your thoughts on. And so that might be helpful. And if that's not your learning style, that's totally fine. But just so you know how it's going to roll. Many of you already know me, so you know how I roll anyway. But if that would be helpful, please go ahead and do that. So I'm going to just start by naming that we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and relationship-based work. And because I know the field here in New Mexico, many of you already know a lot about this. So I may not be saying something that's new for you, but what I hope is that you either hear something in a new way or that you feel really validated in terms of how you're using this in your work. And for those of you who it's brand new, welcome to my world. I'm thrilled to be sharing this kind of information because my belief system is that emotional intelligence will make our communities healthier. And so come on board with me as we have these conversations together. So let me just start by defining what relationship-based work really is. I think a lot of us in the early childhood world say we're in relationship-based work and think that means that we're just focusing on relationships. That certainly is one aspect of it. You know, certainly for those of us who work in the state-funded home visiting program, our program was created with infant mental health as our foundation for our work. And so relationships really are how we do our work. But one of the ways I want you to be thinking about relationship-based work is that in relationship-based work, the relationship between the service provider and the individual is the vehicle for change. For many of us, we've heard this conversation, how you are matters, right? So it is in the relationship, the type of relationship we have with people we are working with that provides the opportunity for change. So it's the quality of the relationship that's formed, which really has the influence for change. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about relationship-based work. The other piece I want to just remind people is that our relationship with the families we work with, even though we're talking about it in terms of relationships, it is really, it's not a mutual back and forth relationship like I give you something and you give me something. We are really being of service. And I think it gets really confusing when we talk about relationship-based work that it's like we're friends, but we're actually not friends. So it's a certain kind of relationship that I want people to hold in mind. And the other part of it is that we are part of every single relationship we are in. For those of you who were in my workshops in the fall, we talked about that significantly, right? About making sure that we're watching how we are, because we are half of every relationship we're in. So this kind of conversation we're going to have this morning, tomorrow, and Thursday is relevant for us in our work with families, but it's also in our relevant in our work with our colleagues. So I've defined relationship-based work, and so I'm just curious if people are comfortable, if anybody wants to drop into the chat, which now I'm going to tell Maya I'll keep my eye on, what emotional intelligence means to you. So let's just get a sense. Is anybody willing to drop something in the chat? I want to make sure that we all have an agreement about what emotional intelligence really means. Being smarter with feelings. Yes, Molly, thank you for that. Good. What else? Anybody else? Being in tune with yourself and others. Great. Understanding my emotions and those of others. Beautiful. Understanding regulation. Lovely. Good. Being conscious about emotions, being able to sympathize. Great. Understanding and accepting feelings, understanding how emotions impact behavior. Beautiful. See, I told you, many of you already know this. So that's lovely. Understanding feelings, being aware of your emotions and others' emotions, empathy, beautiful, great. Being aware of your emotions, terrific, great. Okay. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to stop the chat. I do people, not technology, so sorry about that. So let's just have an agreement that this is what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize your own and other people's feelings, to discriminate between feelings and label them appropriately, and then to use that information to guide how you handle situations. So emotional intelligence has several levels to it. The first is to recognize that you have a feeling, to be able to discriminate between feelings, label them, be able to identify feelings in others, and then to be able to use that information to guide how we interact with people. So even in that definition, I want people to see how important emotional intelligence is in relationships, period. So when you're thinking about working with families, it's really important to identify what comes up for you when you're working with families. Be able to maybe identify how the family you're working with might be feeling around a certain situation. And then based on all of that, making a decision about what you're going to do or say. Most of that is unconscious. Most of that happens without awareness. And what I want for people is to be aware of that process. I want that to be in the front of your mind as you are moving through your workday. I'm going to offer you all a few quotes that I think are really important as we sort of dive into this conversation. This is by Mevlana Rumi. People of the world don't look at themselves, so they blame one another. My experience as a person who studies human behavior for almost 40 years now is that most people look at a situation and see the other person as the person causing the problem. And I certainly have been one of those people at different times in my life. And it's really easy to see what others are doing that isn't working. And what emotional intelligence requires us to do is to look at ourselves and to notice what we're doing or how we're handling a situation. And so if this quote resonates for you, I want you to just notice every time you start to blame somebody for something. Now, I want to be really clear. Sometimes other people are doing things, right? So I'm not saying that that's not happening. And I'm not saying that everything that happens in relationships is our own fault. But I want us to be able to look at both parts of that, because that's what emotional intelligence means. Not just, I feel this way, so you need to change. It is, I feel this way, and how do you feel? And so given that we both feel this way, how are we going to move forward? Any people in the audience studies students of psychology, you would know Carl Jung, one of my favorites. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I'm going to read that again. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And why I want to say, why I want to offer this quote is because I think we think how we're feeling is or how our responses are, is the right thing. And so then we move forward. Well, I'm annoyed, and so I'm going to move forward. Or this is what this person does, so I'm going to move forward. And what Carl Jung is asking us to do is reflect on our own feelings. If you're not reflecting, many of you have heard me say this, you are operating on autopilot. And autopilot is usually driven by your unconscious. And so when you are not on autopilot, many of us use the term you are in the present moment. When you are not on autopilot, you are actually making decisions that are about the moment at hand versus being reactive. Everything, oh, this is a good one. If you haven't seen this one before, this is going to really bug most people, but I love it because he says everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Now, I'm a fan of when something irritates me about somebody else, then I just don't want to be around that other person, right? Like that's just my human response. And what he's asking us to do in this particular quote is to use the opportunity that when we're irritated by somebody else, to use that as an opportunity to reflect. Many of us in the infant mental health world will use the phrase turn activation into exploration. So when you're irritated by somebody else, it's a real helpful moment for you to use that cue to say, I wonder what it is about this moment that is impacting me, that's making me feel this way. Because when you have that level of awareness, you make decisions about how you want to respond to something. And ultimately, I feel like for me, this quote is what literally drove my personal growth, right? And an old colleague who I don't know if she's in the room here would say to me, Mara, is there anything that doesn't annoy you? And I was like, no, pretty much everything annoys me, right? And so I could make that be about other people. And instead, I made that about me. Why does that annoy me? Why is what that person said so irritating? And so it's really about me being responsible for my reactions and my feelings. Another quote by Henry Ford, many of you know this one. If there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from his angle as well as your own. The first few quotes that I offered were really about us looking at ourselves and our own feelings and responses. This helps us to begin to shift perspective. Many of you in the audience know Victor Bernstein's concept around the beach ball. This is really speaking about that when we look at something, if we have a beach ball between you and I'm looking at the ball from my perspective and you're looking at the ball from your perspective. And when we turn the beach ball, I can start to see things from your perspective and you can start to see it from mine. So many people in the home visiting world or in the infant mental health world will talk about shifting the beach ball. And it's a perfect example of shifting perspective, which is an aspect of emotional intelligence. And then for many of you, you know, I do not do a training without this quote by Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning. He's a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This is about self-regulation. This is about between the moment that somebody says something and I open my mouth, that's the space he's talking about. That's what self-regulation is. That's what we're talking about in terms of being responsive versus reactive, right? It is in that space between somebody doing something or saying something and us opening our mouths is a space for us to choose how we want to handle that moment. You're in a visit with a family and a caregiver says something that you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe they just said that. That's stimulus. And in the space between that caregiver statement and our opening our mouths is a conscious moment where we can make a decision about how we want to respond. And I will tell you, when you are conscious in the moment, you are regulating yourself, and that changes how you are in relationships. I can offer you the same example with you and your colleague. Your colleague says that thing that you're so annoyed by, stimulus. Before you have your response is your space. That's self-regulation. Anybody has a partner, that happens in your personal relationships. Anybody has children of your own, that happens in those relationships too. So when we're talking about emotional intelligence, we are 100% talking about each one of you individually. All right, so this is what being emotionally intelligent means. It means being self-aware, knowing what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. Some of us are very good at this. Some of us, this is our strength. For some people, they're like, I have no idea. Some people are like, I did not grow up with this. I have no idea what my feelings are, or feelings are really irrelevant. And I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm here to offer you another way of thinking. But being self-aware means that I'm really able to identify I'm feeling irritated because somebody is interrupting me. The what and the why. The second piece of it, which we're going to talk more about in a little bit, is recognizing your patterns in relationships. And the truth is we all have patterns in relationships, whether we're aware of them or not. This is another piece about understanding behavior, right? Is that we all tend to have the same patterns that either work well for us or don't work well for us. And so the invitation around emotional intelligence is to start noticing what those patterns are. And if you notice the patterns, then are they working for you or are they not working? The next piece of being emotionally intelligent is about being self-managing or self-regulating. That's the Viktor Frankl quote that I just offered. It's, can I regulate my reactions to choose how I want to respond? In choosing how I want to respond is actually what helps us shift our patterns. It changes neural pathways. If you are on autopilot, your neural pathways say this, and you say this. When you regulate and choose, you start to change neural pathways in your brain. Our brain is very plastic. We are changed by relationships and experiences. You responding to people is part of how you change your experience. Empathic. Understanding and sharing the feeling of others, recognizing and responding appropriately to others' feelings. I want to be really clear in our work with families, when it says understanding and sharing the feelings of others, we are not sharing that we have the same feeling as them, right? A caregiver says, oh, I'm so angry at my partner because they're not whatever, is not the moment for you to share your feeling of, yes, I am annoyed with my partner too. That is not what that moment is about, right? It is really about understanding fear, understanding sadness, understanding anger, understanding frustration, and being able to identify that feeling for yourself. You may make a judgment call in the moment and share, I do understand that I've been through something similar. However, if you do that, you are shifting the focus of your work with the family from them to you. Now, that's a judgment call. Some people may do that for a reason, but I want those of you who do share your personal life with your families to be discerning and make a decision about why you are doing that. I think there's a universal, like, I just want people to feel like I know what they're going through. Well, you don't have to share your experience for them to feel your focus on them. Often, as soon as you start talking about yourself, the focus starts to shift from them to you. And then the last piece that I want to name about being emotionally intelligent is when your thinking and feeling and acting are in alignment, and that it comes from a place of honesty and strong moral principles. Now, some of you know me, some of you know me very well. I am a glass half empty person who has worked really hard to be a glass half full person. So my first thought about just about everything is negative. It is, I don't know why. I mean, I can probably tell you why, but we're not going to get into that. But it is natural for me to go to a place of negativity. So if anybody in the room is similar, I want to name that for this last sentence, that because my thinking is negative doesn't mean that I want everything to be aligned with negativity. I might have a thought about something that's negative, and then I need to shift because how I want to be in the world is a glass half full person, and I want that thinking and feeling and acting to be in alignment. I had a conversation with somebody just recently around toxic positivity. I am not a fan of toxic positivity, which does not mean you have to not be a fan also. But I just want to make sure that we are in a space of reality, right? When people are too positive, you're missing the other side. And when we are too negative, we're missing the other side. So how do you hold space for both of those? And so here's your roadmap. I'm a big fan of strategies. It is one thing to know a concept or to learn ways of thinking, but what I really want is to equip you with some concrete strategies about how to do this. So this is your roadmap. Something, I use the word triggers us, something activates us, something irritates us, annoys us, whatever word works for you. These are your 4 steps. These are your 4 steps to build your emotional intelligence muscles. What am I feeling is your first question. What am I needing is your second question. Your third question is usually what people don't pay attention to, which is what might the other person be feeling? And then your fourth one is how do I choose to respond? I'm going to just offer this to you all too. I have 2 older sisters, and one of my sisters had, when her kids were teenagers, we talked about this, and she was like, oh my God, I need to write this down and put it on my refrigerator, because it was really what she needed to do to be in response to an adolescent. So being emotionally intelligent is about being emotionally intelligent in the workplace, in your home, and in your community. This is not just a work concept. This is how do you want to be in the world? So as you look at these questions to reflect on for yourself, I want you to think, where might you get stuck? For some people who who were not brought up with talking about feelings, that might be where your work is, just to be able to identify what you need. For those of us who feel way too deeply, may be able to do that first one really easily, but not be able to figure out what we need. So pay attention to that. You might need some space. You might need to take a break. You might need to defend your stance, although that's never really effective in that moment when you're dysregulated, but that may be what you feel like you need. And then you're going to shift to what the other person might be feeling. That for some people might be where you get stuck. You might be, I'm so angry at that other person. I don't really care how they're feeling, right? So that will be where your work is. I'm not interested in you acting like you're not mad at them. I'm interested in you building the muscle to at some point be able to shift and see where they're coming from. And then, as the Viktor Frankl quote reminds us, you have a choice in how you respond. So a lot of us talk about this for those of you who do reflective practice or reflective supervision, we talk about this in terms of being of two minds, right? We talk about paying attention to ourselves and also paying attention to the other. We talk about that when we're talking about understanding behavior. It's the same idea here. When we are dysregulated, we are less able to attend to the other. And so what am I needing in this particular roadmap is your regulation strategy. What do I need to regulate myself so that I can realize I'm in relationship? This is a quote that I use almost all the time. I think I might have been reminded about it from Laura Levsky. All life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one destiny affects all indirectly. As humans, we are powerful beings. We have an impact on everyone we come into contact with. Everything we do and say has a ripple effect. I often say this to people. I just was doing a training yesterday, and I said, my goal when I do work with people around this particular topic is that I want people to become neurotic messes, which is not very kind, but I want people to be so thoughtful about what they do and say, because how we are matters. How we are matters. And most people I come across will say, oh, I don't let my feelings interfere with my work with families. And I'm going to tell you, unless you are doing something from a conscious strategy perspective, it is impacting. Because unless you are self-managing, you are unconsciously managing. And stuff is coming out. So many people in the early childhood world know this quote by Jerry Paul, how you are as important as what you do. But I want you all to think, how are you doing with that? How are you doing with that? One of the things about being emotionally intelligent that is not the good news, but it requires daily assessment on ourselves. It requires us to be asking ourselves on a regular basis, how am I doing now? Many of you have heard me say this too. It is not about perfection. It is just about growth. It's also about giving ourselves grace when we're not able to do it. But if you find that you're giving yourself grace for 6 months straight, then that's a problem, right? Well, I'm having a hard time, so I'm gonna give myself grace. Wow, I've been having a hard time for 3 months. Wow, I might need to do a little work here. I might need to do a little shift of perspective. So how we are is more important than what we do. I think I might have mentioned this the last time we did the training on understanding behavior. Communication is 58% body language, 35% tone of voice, and 7% the words we use. So for those of you who are thinking, I've got this because I am speaking professionally, how is your tone and how is your body language? And for those of you in the group who are similar to me, who can easily dissociate, you can be like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, well, dissociation is actually not self-awareness, right? Dissociation is a strategy to help us survive. but it is not being in the present moment at all. So I want you to think in this moment, are there some families you're working with? Is there a colleague that you have? Or if you're a leader in your program, is there a staff member that you are struggling with where you're thinking you're communicating very clearly? Maybe a colleague of yours. What are you actually communicating? And because I'm interested in growth, I want people to think, is there something I need to do in this relationship? Right? If you're able to pinpoint a certain person or a group of people, is there something I need to do? This is from 6 Seconds. This is the townspeople will recognize this from Amy Franklin McConnell, or is it McConnell Franklin? It's she has those 3 names in a particular order. I think Amy is first, but I don't know the last 2. She does a lot of work on emotional intelligence, and she does this lovely description that I talk about in terms of what does it mean to listen. I think somebody stated in the chat when I asked emotional intelligence, they said listening. This is sort of the trajectory of what it means to actually be listening. Most people who are just thinking about what they're about to say or thinking about their next step, whatever, are actually not listening. I think most of us have moved past that and we are in the pretend listening stage, right? Which is I'm looking at the other person and I'm nodding, but I'm really not taking in everything they're saying because I'm so irritated by what they're saying, right? That is pretend listening. Or if you're with a family that's particularly challenging and you're just doing everything you can to make it through, right? You're in pretend listening. If you've had a really rough day at work and you go home and your partner or your children start talking to you and you're like, can you please stop talking? But you're still smiling and nodding, you are pretend listening. Is that bad? No, I just want you to be aware that's what you're doing, right? Emotional intelligence is all about awareness. For those of you who are leaders of agencies, are you pretend listening to your staff? For those of you who are colleagues, are you pretend listening to your colleagues? And then there's selective listening. I'll listen to you, but I won't listen to you. Or I'll listen to this part, but oh, now you're going to start complaining and I'm going to space out. That's selective listening. And those 3 types of listening are completely about us. We are completely focusing on ourselves. And so as I'm doing this, I just want you to think, can you picture yourself in each one of these spots? And then we've moved to sort of this more connection type of listening where we're a little more attentive. We're actually listening to the words they're saying, or maybe attending to their feeling state. Some of us tend to listen to feelings more than words, or we notice body language more than words, but that's more attentive listening. Sympathetic listening is where is holding space. That's what holding space is sympathetic listening. Sympathetic is not about having pity. Sympathetic is about holding feelings. And then empathic listening is when we are 100% with that other person. I feel like holding space is a continuum of sympathetic and empathetic, right? Sympathetic is, oh, wow, you're having a hard time. Empathetic is, wow, I can feel your pain. I don't need to name why I feel it, but that is when I'm with you. Maya Angelou says this wonderful quote, this too I use a lot, which is people will forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I can remember my first grade teacher. I have no idea what he did, but I felt that he cared about me. I was an educator for many years. I have no idea what strategy he was using because all I knew is I felt good in his presence. And that's what I want you to think about from an emotional intelligence perspective is how can I make myself attend to the other person in a way that they feel seen and heard and valued. because we all come with our own personal experiences and values and backgrounds, it is essential for us to be able to identify that. I come from a very quiet family. We are not big talkers. I am easily overwhelmed by a lot of talking. It overwhelms my nervous system. In terms of values, there are certain belief systems and values that you all grow up with, that the families that you are working with have experienced them differently. How do you hold your belief system and values under a microscope to be able to look at them? I mean, some of us are like, I can't believe that person just did that. Like, what are they, like, not reflective? And it's like, yes, most people are not reflective. They were not thinking. They were just doing, right? How we grew up, our background, our experiences shape how we interpret situations. It is really helpful to be able to learn how to reflect on ourselves in this particular way. When you catch yourself saying, "Why, I can't believe they're doing that," or "Why would somebody do that?" or "Who does something like that?" That is your cue that you are operating from your own value and belief system and experience with somebody who has a different value or belief system or experience. That is all that moment is. It is very uncomfortable and irritating, but that's all the difference is. And so what do you do when you recognize that? Because we are the professional in our work, it is our job to shift perspective. For you as a leader of an agency, you are the role model for shifting perspective. And for professionals in the field with your colleagues, you are responsible for your own. How do you want to be with other people? So here comes your first reflection. I'm going to ask people to do, if you want to, if you're comfortable. And I see there's some people who are in whole groups together. So if you are in whole groups together, just don't let the people next to you see what you're writing. And so the first thing I want you to do is to think of a dynamic. And when I say dynamic, I'm talking about a relational dynamic that are the best for you at work. Right? And so if you are with your colleagues, really, this is not about sharing this with other people. This is about you doing a self-reflection. So I want you to think about a relationship or two that are the best for you at work. And just write down a name or initial, whatever makes sense. And seriously, I'm watching groups that are in here together. So don't, or pairs, if you're writing the other person, don't let them see your paper. I don't want anybody's feelings hurt. Okay. Now I want you to think about a relationship at work or two that are the most challenging for you. This is the one I really don't want your colleagues to see. And just write them down. Okay. So under 1, you have a couple of initials or a couple of names. And then under 2, you have a couple of initials or a couple of names. And here comes the work. What part do you play in them being so positive? And what part do you play in them being so challenging? So as was advertised in this workshop, it is a little reflective and a little interactive. So take a moment to contemplate this. This is an application-based training. What do you do? What part do you play in those relationships being positive? And what part do you play in it being so challenging? This is not about blame. There's a relationship I think of from my old work world that was challenging. And It stayed challenging because I stayed stuck in my negative feelings. I stayed stuck. I stayed in blame. And so that was my part that I played in it. I'm just naming that because I think people might have a harder time on that one. And I can't make you do this, but I encourage you to do it. You're here at this training for a reason, aside from probably getting some hours, training hours, but there's something about this topic that was of interest to you. So take the risk. And because it's too big of a group to share, we're not going to share. And my hope is that that gives you something to contemplate as you move forward. Gives you something to chew on. Because if you remember, one of the things that I was mentioning about emotional intelligence is about recognizing the patterns that we engage in our relationships. And if you start to recognize this is what I do with challenging and people I experience as challenging, then how do you shift perspective, right? How do you do something different? So what are your patterns? These are some helpful questions for you to ask yourself as you contemplate these relationships that you notice you tend to get into. Have I been here before? If so, what do I have to learn? Is the way I'm behaving working for me? And if so, how does it work for me? Is the way I'm approaching this in my best interest? Is it in the best interest of others? Am I operating with integrity? I'll just offer, I mean, some of you know me, but my pattern used to be in relationships, not necessarily in work relationships, where I was the person people came to for help. And I was always the person that was always helping everybody. I'm a therapist by training for a reason, right? Because it was how I rolled. And then there'd be a point where I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. Why is everybody asking me for help? And the reason why everybody is asking me for help is that was my pattern in relationships. It was working for me for a reason because I was feeling good about myself. But I also felt like my relationships were not reciprocal. I was doing all the helping. And so they ultimately were not working for me. And the work was, how do I approach this differently so that it feels more balanced? So that's just an example for me. That might resonate for you or it might not. But I want you to be able to think about your patterns. You cannot change something you are not aware of. So if you're interested in this lens of being emotionally intelligent, what's being asked of you is to take a look. Another thing to think about is, where are you putting your attention? There's literally research on this, that whatever you attend to grows. So if you're always looking at, I do a lot of work with pre-K teachers, and we'll talk about challenging behavior. And they'll say, the more you look for challenging behavior, the more you will see challenging behavior. You're not creating it, but you are going to see it everywhere. The more you see children doing well, the more you will see children doing well. You are not creating children doing well, but you are actually seeing it. That's about the individual who is doing the seeing. So what are you attending to? Where are you putting your focus? Another piece of this is, where are you putting your focus in terms of the pain and suffering of the families that you're working with? Are you 100% attending to trauma, the pain, and missing their strengths? Or are you 100% just focusing on their strengths, which is the toxic positivity that I mentioned earlier, and missing that there's some pain and suffering? I think I can't remember where I saw this, but with is the glass half full or glass half empty response for the person who's the healthiest is there's water in the glass. And it's not about how much, it's about what they're seeing. Maya, I'm going to play this and I can see you. Can you tell me if the audio is working okay?
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half miss the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it, but did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
So this for me is about where are you putting your attention? What are you looking for? What are you looking at? And I will tell you from a human behavior perspective, we all look for something, right? That is just the way we're wired. And so the invitation for each one of you is, what are you looking for? In relationships that are challenging, for me, I'm always wanting to be right, so I notice when they're doing something wrong. Right? That keeps me stuck in a pattern that is not healthy. Right? It's human, but it's not healthy. So do I want to do that differently? So then I might look for something that they're doing well, just so I can see them as more than their problem, more than the negative thing I'm thinking about. Is that making sense to you all, the way I'm saying it? Some of you I see on my screen, so nods are helpful. Great, good. Many of you know I'm a Laura Lipsky fan, which we'll talk about more about her and her work on Thursday, but this is a quote that particularly resonated for me when I was trained by her. And she says, many of us have built architecture around our hearts to defend against the frustration, pain, and suffering that is around us. For some of us, the fortress gets bigger and the walls higher, and in time we find ourselves locked in by the very defenses we have constructed for our own protection. This particularly resonated for me. I did, as Maya did my introduction, I did some work in a therapeutic preschool back east where I was working with children with significant behavioral issues. So catching chairs and being bitten and dealing with aggression was just another day in my life. But because I was less conscious at that time, how I survived it was by becoming defensive. It is a survival technique. It is what kept me being able to show up every day. Fast forward 20 years, I still had that defense. I was still behind that wall. And because I used it for protection at one place, it became a problem at another place. This is why self-awareness is essential in this process. It is not about judging ourselves for creating defenses. It is about being aware that we create them for survival, but do we still need them? And if the answer is yes, okay. But if you don't need it, that's where the work is. Many of you know this, and I will remind you because stress makes us forget everything we know. Many of you in this room could be up here doing this training instead of me. You know this. Many people experience stress just as a normal part of our work. We are working with families. You work with humans. You are in stressful situations. And when you experience stress, you tend to forget what you already know. Many of us have really good strategies to regulate ourselves until we're stressed and we can't use that strategy because stress impacts our ability to recall. Stress gets in the way of us being our best selves all the time. So it's really important not only for you to hold space in this way, but for you to have space held for you where you feel seen and heard and validated, because that really is what fills our cups. It's really what fills our cups. You all know this, that as soon as you are validated for your feelings or you validate somebody else for their feelings, behavior, the intensity of behavior reduces. Is the almost first line of intervention that we talk about when we're talking about behavior, is validation of feeling. And so when we are validated and we are seen and we are heard, it allows us to be able to tolerate the pain and suffering that is around us. There are other strategies that are really helpful to be reminded of when we're talking about dealing with this chronic state of stress. Breathing. I know everybody laughs at this one, but most people are holding their breaths when they're stressed. Breathing is one of those strategies that you can do in 30 seconds, maybe even 15 seconds, and is easily forgotten. Gratitude, I think, is fortunately much more embedded in people's practice when they're dealing with stress. Connection with other people. People who have animals often will talk about being with their animal or petting an animal. Thinking about something hopeful, which I know for some of us, it's sometimes based on our wiring or based on what's happening, it can be challenging. And my favorite is laughing. Laughing is the one strategy I want to recommend to everybody when you're feeling stressed, because laughing is, to me at least, moves energy the quickest and the most effectively. Now, the laughing is not at somebody else. The laughing is just about pure laughter. Laura Lipsky talks about moving energy a lot. Excuse me. So, as human beings, we are hardwired for relationships. All learning happens in the context of relationships. When we talk about attachment for babies, they create templates of the world based on their relationships with their caregivers. That is literally how babies learn. We all want what's best for people, I'm going to assume, because we are in the service industry. And I will remind you, when we know better, we do better. That's for you, but I also want you to hold that for people that you're either working with collegially or with families. If you think this is true, that when we know better, we do better, how does this affect how you are with families? If you are a person who believes when we know better, we do better, that is literally an emotionally intelligent statement. That is literally what it means to be emotionally intelligent. which is I understand this person is doing the best they can in the moment. It does not mean it's not effective or it's not harming somebody, but we do know they are doing the best they can in this moment. Parker Palmer has this quote that I think is really important for us to say to ourselves over and over again. The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, and companioned exactly as it is. This is so simplistic, but I had some friends visiting me. This was last year, and I was saying, I don't drink enough water. It was just a statement. You know, I live in the desert. It's hot here and dry. I don't drink enough water. And my friend, who I've known for 40 years, was like, well, you know, you could put this in the water, you could have seltzer, you could do, and she was like trying to fix the statement that I said, I don't drink enough water. And I literally looked at her and I was like, do you think I'm an idiot? Like, as if I had never thought that I could actually put something in my water, right? Like, and it was well intended, but really missed the mark, right? And it was nothing, I didn't need a whole lot, but I didn't need her to fix me. I didn't need help with drinking more water. I just wanted to go, yeah, I want you to drink more water too. I offer that example because that is benign. And I think a lot of us are not doing it even in benign situations. People really just want to know that we care. They don't really care what we know. Although I will say, we do come to our work with families with experience and knowledge. If you're here from early intervention, you have a particular specialty or a skill set. If you're here in home visiting, you have some understanding about parent-child relationship, right? That's what you bring to it. But the first thing, I don't know if people, how many people are here from home visiting that from the old days, and we would say, you don't do anything for the first 6 weeks, but build relationships. That was literally our assignment, was for the first 6 weeks, build relationship. So people need to know how you feel about them before they will listen to you. Maya, I'm going to do the same thing on this video too. Make sure. Oh, sorry, tried to get the commercial off.
With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you'll get your first month free when you join today. Sign up for just $1 down, 24.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
This is so powerful to me, right? It's sort of what we've been talking about. Sorry.
At Wayfair, we're game for every
We're gonna watch
style.
Wayfair apparently
Let's
again.
play.
I think it's really just really helpful to be able to be reminded about how we respond to people. And this is, these examples, I don't know if you were able to do this. Many of you have seen this clip before, but as she's describing things, it's like you can see where in the emotional intelligence spectrum each player was, right? If you can join somebody in their pain, the animal who was joining was not talking about their own experiences. They were just making connection, right? The other thing she says that I want to just name because I think it's really important is that what we're talking about when we're talking about emotional intelligence in general is it's a requirement for us to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is not easy for many of us. And again, for many people were brought up a certain way where vulnerability was actually frowned upon. And so it may, in fact, be even more challenging to think that there's value in this. The helpful part for me, if anybody is a geek like me, there's research behind all of this. It's like we have learned more now about connection, about relationship, about what helps people heal. And it's not telling them what to do, it's being with them in their pain and suffering. So I'm going to invite another reflection. So if you've put your pen down, grab it again. And if you need another piece of paper, find another piece of paper. And I want you to think about a time when you were at your best. When you were at your best, when you were excited and effective, either at home or work, whatever feels the easiest to access. And I'm going to leave this slide up here, but I'm going to read through this and then give you some time to think about it. So I want you to think about a time when you were at your best. And then I want you to make a list of the behaviors, your attitudes, your perspectives that you had at those times. And then I want you to think about what you might need to do to get back to that space. This is emotional intelligence on many levels, recognizing your feelings, being able to identify them, being able to shift a pattern. So much of this is about choice. We've got a lot of people here, and so I'm just going to ask if people might be willing to share some piece of that in the chat. Either, whatever piece feels helpful for you from this particular reflection, just drop it in the chat. This is the part about being witnessed. There's value in thinking something, there's value in writing something down, and then there's even more value in being witnessed in your growth. And so if you're comfortable, just drop something in the chat from this particular reflection so that we can witness each other. And I do know I'm asking for people to make themselves vulnerable and take a risk. And if you're comfortable with that, please do so. And I can see people leaning in, so I'm thinking some people are putting something in the chat. Being intentional and making the decision that it felt good within myself to be in that excited and energetic space. Yeah, I think it's really helpful to remember that there are those times when we felt really good, right? Yeah, I'm doing my best right now. I love that. I think I can attribute that to my new skill of self-responsibility. Beautiful. That is self-awareness. Fantastic. I was effective at work. My attitude was positive and looking for joy. Others would love the career that I have. Look at you. This is a person who's made for the job they're in. Beautiful. Yeah. What else? What else did you notice by doing this reflection? So people are not only witnessing you, they are giving you feedback. This is like the chat version of feedback, right? Good. What else did people notice by doing this? Beautiful. Thank you. Practicing gratitude and reframing my negative thoughts to positive ones. Focus on the present, focus on what I control. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Good. At my best when I had more work-life balance. Oh, yes, Katrina. More attuned to both spaces. Yeah. Lighter, happier. I need to continue to set boundaries with my time and balancing more what I love personally, my self-care. What's required when we talk about doing self-care is this level of awareness, right? I need to take care of myself better. Well, what space do you want to get back to? I want to get back to work-life balance. Okay, so what would you need to do to get back to work space balance? I need to set some boundaries. Thank you, Katrina, for the opportunity to unpack that a little more. Was my best health-wise when supported, accountability, intentional, goal-oriented confidence in myself. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, great. Not worrying about what others were thinking about me. I was having fun, being playful and feeling connected. Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm a worrier, Nora, so I don't even know what that is. Not worrying about what others are thinking. I had this, some of you have heard this story. I'm a worrier. And I said to my father, you don't worry, do you? And he said, well, I don't find value in it. And I said, I don't find value in it either, but that doesn't mean I don't automatically worry. Like it's automatic. I think there'd be value in worrying right now. Having confidence at what I do, but having a positive attitude for seeking constructive criticism from supervisors. Yeah. Yeah. I think that phrase is such a challenging one. I want the field to change that constructive criticism. I want those words to be different, right? Let's just say feedback, right? Yeah. Good. My intention in offering that reflection is for people to be able to stop for a moment and recognize what it felt like when things were going well. And to have the moment to be able to say, well, what was I doing that was working at that time? I think, Katrina, your example is I want to keep using it, because when you have that awareness and you knew what you were doing, that's what your self-care strategy is. So that's lovely. Thank you for your willingness, everybody, to put that in the chat. So here are some things I want you to keep in mind. I will probably do this tomorrow and Thursday because I think they're really helpful. This is from Victor Bernstein, and his definition of frustration is that frustration literally means that your agenda is different than my agenda. And the reason why I find this one particularly helpful is because when you are in a state of frustration, when you realize it's just that we have different agendas, you actually have a choice. Do I let go of my agenda or do I push my agenda? So when you understand that's what frustration means, you actually have some steps that you can take. Blame is a defense against feeling powerless and guilty. I'm going to say this one again. Blame is a defense against feeling powerless and guilty. I remember many years ago, my boss caught me in a lie, which meant she asked me a question and I answered her and my answer was a lie. And I felt so guilty. I was like literally blaming somebody else for it. And it was because I got nabbed. I got nabbed. And it was a defense, was to blame somebody else. Part of what I really want people to get is that the majority of human behavior is just human. And we're just doing it to be able to make it through. I am not advocating lying and I'm not advocating blaming. I'm just wanting people to get that when people do that, they're doing that for a reason. Why is that person denying that? Why is that person blaming that other person? Why is that person filling in the blank? That is a piece of emotional intelligence when you are understanding other people's perspectives and what they might be feeling and needing at that moment. You all know my all-time favorite. We do not see things as they are. We see them as we are. This is that example of you have a situation where 3 people are involved and you have 3 completely different perspectives of the situation because everybody is seeing it from their perspective. In my younger, less conscious days, I believed that my perspective was the right perspective. And what growth is realizing it was just my perspective. It didn't mean I was wrong. It just meant it was the way I made meaning out of the situation. Meaning making is in the eye of the person making the meaning. You might make meaning out of it differently. We do not see things as they are. We see them as we are. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but a thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. So how do you take care of your part of the web? This is emotional intelligence in a visual form. How do I take care of the way in which I interact with people? Because how I am impacts other people. How will you pay attention to your part? I always tell people to take care of their own business. It's the same thing. So what would you need to do to become a more emotionally intelligent person? So just take a moment and jot down a few thoughts before we do the next reflection. What would you need to do to become more emotionally intelligent, given who you are and your skill set right now? Notice my feelings more. Notice what I need. Make guesses about what other people might be feeling. Intentionally seeing the good in others. Assuming good in others. I'm going to take you to the next reflection. So if you need to turn your piece of paper over, great. Need to get another piece. I want you, so given that we've talked about this relationship-based work as understanding that the relationship is the agent for change, that it is the connection that changes us. I want you to just think about a few people who have changed you, who have inspired you, and just write down their names. Relationships change us. So think of a few people who have inspired you or changed you, and just write down their names. 3 to 5. If you are having a hard time, just write 1 or 2. Okay, does everybody have a few people's names written down? Okay. Now, I want you to remember a key moment with each one of them and write down what they did or said or how they made you feel. So with each person that you wrote down, I want you to remember a key moment. And the invitation is to be as honest with yourself and as intentional as possible. A lot of people will go, it was my mother and she said this. It's like, well, just take a moment and just think, is there something else or somebody else? Which isn't to deny that that's what's happening. But I want you to take this opportunity to go a little deeper. What did you learn or take away from that person? So you wrote down their names and a key moment. And what did you learn or take away from that particular person and the thing that they did? And then the last question is, whose list will you be on? We're talking about relationships as the agent for change. How you are with this level of emotional intelligence has the ability to change others. This is not an ego thing. This is about understanding that relationships change people. All right, I'm going to ask people again if anybody's willing to put anything in the chat from this reflection. Because if we were all together, I might say, does anybody want to share? Although you're welcome to share, unmute and share, but it may not be your comfort level. So drop in the chat what came up for you as you did this reflection. I'm looking at faces. Nobody wants to put it in the chat, which is totally fine. But if you do, we'd love to hear from you.
Can I say something more?
Yes, go ahead,
I think
Maida.
For me, the people that I wrote down that inspired me and what they did, I felt like they were curious,
Mm,
empathetic,
okay.
and also weren't necessarily judging just the situation, but were there present, you
Beautiful.
know.
Yeah.
So I think for both, like curiosity came
Mhm.
about.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Was it helpful to think about it? Maida, did you see something that you didn't see before?
I definitely saw, for me, I reflected that there has been instances lately that I have not had those people present to inspire. And
Mhm.
so it's a need of me. I need to have those people close
Yes.
so that it kind of fills my cup. You
Yes.
know, that's an area I identified areas of need.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And it's a helpful reminder, right? Maida, thank you for that, that we still need other people, right? When we're talking about this relationship-based work, we could potentially be the person that uh, encourages change in the other, but we still need it. It might change over the years what we need, but we do still need it. That's beautiful. Thank you for your honesty, Maida.
The other thing that brought up, just very quickly, is when those people are missing,
Yeah.
those instances are missing, I found myself being less empathetic and present.
Yes.
And so just noticing those things,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really good awareness, right? And again, it shows the impact of relationships, right? Is that when your cup is not being filled in that way, you're not as full. And so you might be a little less, more reactive, a little less empathic. Yeah. Good. Thank you, Maida. All right, we've got some responses in the chat. I have a friend who models being a good wife and friend, one that prays for me and one that encourages me. Beautiful. Yes. That people can make a great positive impact in your life as they remind you who you are, because sometimes we forget. I hear that so often when I offer this reflection, that the people who inspire us help us see who they see us to be, right? Which might be different than how we experience ourselves, which I think is what we do for others too, right? Is that we can hold up a mirror for people to say, look, you are really responding well to your baby. That is so beautiful when they're feeling really horrible about themselves. Beautiful. My boss had a very short temporary job putting away flowers at Home Depot. He would always tell me to chase my adventures, and to dream bigger than what I was thinking was out there for me. Always eager to hear me and my ideas and experience and share his with no judgment. It's similar to what Maida was saying, no judgment, right? They just really hurt us. That's so beautiful. I want everybody to have a person like that in their lives. Yeah. My boss in HR once gave me a poem called On the Other Side of the Desk. He did amazing work with the community and hiring. He showed me how to treat others because it could be you sitting on the other side of the desk. Oh, very powerful. Always keep others' feelings and pride first. Yeah, that's fantastic. Good. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for saying that. My home visitor 10 years ago believed in me. She inspired me to be a home visitor, and I was for 7 years. Now I'm program manager with the same home visiting program. Oh, Shayna, that's fantastic. She also kept telling me to finish school, and I graduated this past fall. I did not pay Shayna to put that in here, but that certainly is a plug for home visiting, right? The value of a relationship, right? Look at that trajectory. Beautiful. Love that. My mom, who models resiliency, perseverance, and strength that I continue to model for my children now. She is the foundation for my success. Now that she has passed, my former dean has now become all of those things for me. I look up to her for inspiration. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's beautiful, Chantel. Rachel, all of mine have been fully engaged, present. I have felt heard and acknowledged, and I always have work to do, owning who I am and being proud of that person. Yes, yes, well said, Rachel. I don't know if this counts. It does count. I'm just going to say that. I haven't even read it, and I'm going to say it counts. I don't know if this counts, but my daughter, oh my gosh, this does count. My daughter is who inspires me. She never gave up and has accomplished many goals through struggles and health issues, but is a successful teacher. Yet when you ask her who inspired her, she always mentions me. I want you to see that when she says that. She moved out. It was very difficult for me. Yeah, yeah. I think anybody can inspire us. There is no, does this count? Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you, Shana. You've always advocated for home visiting because it's truly benefited me. Yes, yeah. My father, I'm just going to name this, but tomorrow is the anniversary of my father's passing. And when I was 20, he gave me the poem Desiderata. Do you guys know that one? When I was 20, he gave that to me. I am not 20 anymore. That is on my refrigerator, and the book is on my bookshelf. I mean, the cover is all tattered, and all I have to do, I'm just saying this for those of you whose people have inspired you, have passed, is that there's still a way to stay connected. I mean, I can literally look at the book and I can feel his love for me. And that's the impact a relationship can have on you. Yeah, it's beautiful. Sorry, things are moving too fast. Can you say the name of the poem again? I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. Desiderata, is that how you say it? Desiderata. Is that right? Something like that. It's a poem from 1927, a very old poem, which is always fascinating to me when history is what we use to soothe ourselves now. Yeah. Thank you all for sharing. These are all such beautiful ways of being inspired. Yes, the kids I work with in my program, day in and out, are always inspire me to be better for them. And when they say they want to pursue a career following in my footsteps, it just makes me want to do more and be more. Beautiful. I had a lovely supervisor who wanted the team to share positive things. And when we met for supervisory moments, I came out of our visits thinking I am accomplished, needed person. Yes. Beautiful. Thanks. Yes. Beautiful. Good. All right. So I'm going to now open this up. And Maya and I had this conversation. This is literally called a workshop for a reason, because there are things for you to reflect on and for interaction to happen. So I'm just curious, as we close the presentation part, what pieces were helpful when we talked about the what relationship-based work is and emotional intelligence? What are some things that you found helpful? I know we just talked about the final reflection, but tell me where this content sits for you and or how you might use this. Were there pieces that were new for you? Were there pieces that were validating for you? And because I want people to grow, what might you use from this? How can you use this in your work or in your lives? And if you want to put it in the chat, you're welcome to. If you want to unmute, might have started us off with unmuting, so I'm a fan of that if you want.
Hey, Mara. This is Christy over in New Mexico.
Hey, Christy.
Oh, I was thinking about, I love the listening scale, and being able to pay attention, like where are we on the scale of truly listening? And then also like thinking about too, like those dynamics and being able to think about like, okay, what challenge, what can I do different for myself? Like, what do I need to do to adjust like whatever that dynamic is looking like?
Yes. Yeah. I'm so glad you're saying that, Christy, because I'm offering things that I want people to use, right? Like I want you to now, when you're in interactions with people, to say, where am I on the listening scale? That is self-awareness in action, right? And thank you for naming the other part, right? We are part of every relationship we're in. It does not mean you are at fault, but what we know, right? We know that when you put energy into something, it shifts something. So even if we are not the person who's engaging in some challenging behaviors, when we shift how we approach it, the relationship changes. All it takes is one person to do a shift for the relationship to shift. So thank you, Christy. Yeah. Bobby says, I will use the self-reflection to improve my skills as a home visitor, specifically the listening scale. Great. Because she says, I enjoyed the reflections and questions of empathy. Beautiful. It's validating to me when you stated that we are not our clients' friends. That boundary is hard for me to keep because my passion for helping others when I can. I'm gonna make a huge assumption here. There's at least 120 people in this room, and I'm gonna say 119 of them are in the same boat you are. I know that's really, I'm making a leap here, but I think boundaries in the helping profession is challenging. I also think boundaries in home visiting and early intervention makes it even more challenging because we are in people's intimate spaces. And those of you who are reflective supervisors, boundaries are hard there too. Right? Yes. Thank you for naming something that I think I could be wrong, but I think it's true for a lot of us. There's a lot of stuff around helping in terms of doing for people versus holding space for people. That's also a helpful reminder. Katrina says, so many things, so many reminders I'll take with me today. Turn activation into exploration was huge for me, right? As soon as you're irritated, after you judge the other person, okay, that would be me, judging the other person, then it's shifting. Why is this irritating me? Yeah. Pausing in the conscious moments is something that will serve me well. And in the RSC I provide to others, beautiful. Yeah. For those of you who provide reflective supervision and consultation, emotional intelligence is required for you to be effective in that role. It almost is the definition of reflective supervision, right? When we talk about being of two minds, you're watching your own feelings and the other person's feeling, and you're trying to figure out, what do I need to say or do that helps the other person? Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Katrina, for naming that. I will definitely use the questions. What am I feeling? What am I needing? What might the other person feel and how do I respond? Good. It was nice to hear that where we feel stuck is where we need to do the work. That is helpful for me and not so convoluted. Yeah. I think that's true in life, right? I mean, we're given so many things and it's like, well, wherever you're stuck, it's like my PT is giving me way too many exercises. I need to stay at the one where I'm stuck, right? Like I need to work on that one. Yeah. Ruby says,
Mara,
yes,
It's Rachel.
Rachel.
I would love to hear more because it really stuck out to me being a neurotic mess.
Oh my God.
Like I loved it. And you already know, I'm just so curious and I want to dig deeper into it just makes so
Yes.
much sense.
Yes.
And
So
so
this is like, if anybody in the room, like for those of you, many of you I know, I have studied psychology. And so we talk about, sort of normal neurotic is somebody who's just like thinks about things and sort of ruminates about things, right? And so when you're neurotic, you're like, well, why did they not call me back? And why why are they not doing that? And do they not like me anymore? Right? It's like a combination of worrying and wondering, but it's automatic, right? Some of us are that all the time, like that's just how we're wired. And so I want you like that on steroids, because I want you to be wondering all the time, right? And I don't want it to be a little, well, why did Rachel not call me back? It's more like, well, I wonder what's going on for Rachel that she didn't call me back, right? Somebody was supposed to come to my house to do some work, and my first response was, they're late. If anybody knows me, I am like so on time, like, annoyingly on time. I'm like, they're late. Judgment. And then I was like, I hope they're okay. I wonder what's going on for them. Does that help, Rachel? Just pretend I mean, my brain. That's a neurotic mess. My brain is a neurotic mess. I'm going to keep going in the chat here. Ruby says, my takeaway is that communication is not only listening, it includes body language and tone of voice, words used. I will keep this in mind during my home visits. Beautiful. And in my personal life. Using the definition of emotional intelligence, I would like to use those aspects to create curriculum. Good. For the kids in programs to use so they can engage in positive pro-social behaviors and practice empathy with each other. I'm going to just name my other hat. For young children, we use the term social emotional development. So social emotional development for young children is the exact same as emotional intelligence in adults. So for those of you who are in a program that has groups of children, right, you will see curriculum that has social emotional development in it. And it's developmentally appropriate for that age, but it is identifying feelings in self and others. It's also about self-regulation, and it's about problem solving. Yeah, so look for that. Yes, that was Brene Brown who did the video on empathy versus sympathy. Good. My takeaway from this workshop is using the self-reflection. Good. Took away a lot from the reflective questions and realized a lot about how I am and why I am the way I am, and what I want to change going forward, and how I listen and notice others' emotions as well as my own. Be patient with your growth. Take it one step at a time, and I'm thrilled that those reflections helped you. I like the reflection of the work relationships we have and what was working and not working. It was really insightful for me. Yeah, I struggle with boundaries. Yeah. Boundaries are important. Yes. Appreciate the roadmap. Yeah. Good, good, good. Taking away that we will see what we focus on. God, isn't that fascinating? Right? This can be very helpful when talking with parents about trying to focus on the family and the child's strengths more than not just the things they need improving. Yeah. It's also something being applied personal lives as well. I feel like everything we talk about can be in this particular realm, can be applied in our personal lives and our professional lives. Would you please share the location to view the YouTube videos you shared? I would love to hear them once again. I will just tell you the name of it. The empathy, sympathy one, because I don't know where the link is. Just go to YouTube and put in Brene Brown. Maya, do you mind typing this for me? Brene Brown, empathy versus sympathy. And the other one is the monkey business illusion. Thank you. Good. Other thoughts, comments people have? Seems like it was helpful for many of you. Some of you was a reminder. What I want to say about reminders is that knowing something and doing something are two different skills. So it's really helpful for us to be able to have somebody to remind us, because we can't remember everything, right? And so I know this, but remembering to do it is something else. So it's really helpful to be reminded. Yeah, good. Other thoughts, comments that would feel helpful to say, name, be witnessed about? This was amazing. One of the best speakers and workshops. I gave Maria Elena $10 to put that in the chat. I'm going to read it again just because I like the first sentence so much. This was amazing. One of the best speakers and workshops I've ever participated. Great reflection for ourselves and understanding of the whys. Thank you. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Any other thoughts or comments people want to make? My commitment to you all when I do these kinds of workshops with you is to offer you some opportunity to grow. That's what this is really about. And because we in the birth to 3, birth to 5 world play such an important role with the families we work with our colleagues, I believe that who we are is so important, and that requires us to do our own work. I want to also say that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you that you need to do work. It just means in our particular type of work, how we are has a really significant impact. And if you want to take it one step further, how we are in the world with each other, in our communities, makes a difference. So when you do something differently, the ripple effect happens. I feel strongly and passionately about this.
Well,
So
and I
wherever
think
you are, hang on a second, Rachel, wherever you are is where I want your growth to be. That's all, wherever you are. Yeah, Rachel, thank you. You know, if I don't finish the thought, I lose it, Rachel, so.
yeah. Well, and what I appreciate is the vulnerability, the sharing of certain things like stories that you shared throughout the time. It creates an even safer space to allow for others to have those thoughts and feelings and reflect on things that have happened or are happening. And so again, that creates strength because when we are vulnerable, that provides strength for others to be that way in certain spaces and times. So I really appreciate that piece that is completely embedded within your training.
Thank you. Yeah. I do a lot of work with, as I said, with pre-K teachers, and I was one of those nightmare pre-K teachers. And it is the reason why I do this work is because I used to be one of those and I'm now one of these. And I did the work to get from here to there. And it is, yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments people have?
I was gonna touch on kind of what you said about like how we are and who we are and how it makes a difference.
Yes.
Um, so one thing my mom always told me when I was young is just kind of smile because you never know whose day you're gonna change.
Mm.
And so before I became a home visitor, I was a mailman for 6 years. And I literally have people from the entire city tell me I was their mailman
Ah,
because they always remembered my smile and how happy I was.
wow.
So like just seeing that and hearing that and having people tell me that I made their day a difference just from smiling and being happy.
So I never thought about this before, but now I'm going to see being a postal person is a relationship-based work, right? You have the potential to change people based on how you are. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it shows up in anything we do, right? I mean, some of you know me that I've said this. I want these conversations to be happening outside of the early childhood world, right? This is not just a birth to 5 concept. This is how do we create healthy offices? How do we create healthy communities? How do we create healthy schools, right? It is my belief that it is in doing this emotional intelligence work that systems become healthier. Yeah. Oh, more stuff is coming in the chat. See, I get distracted. Mary Becker's here. Hi, Mary. Well said, Rachel. Mara's authenticity and willingness to show the neurotic messiness helps us own our own areas of growth. Yes, Mary knows I'm a neurotic mess too. Yes. What is your favorite tool to use to get yourself into a more glass half full way of thinking? Or favorite tool to remind yourself to be more conscious on the day-to-day? I'm so glad you asked that question because it is a concrete strategy. I literally make a choice, and as soon as I catch myself, I've learned this is like a family gene. My first response to pretty much everything is I say, God, what an idiot. Like that's my first response. And so as soon as I hear myself say that, I'll say shift perspective. And I will say, I've been around the block for a long time. I learned this strategy when I started working in home visiting. This was literally an infant mental health thing. Alicia Lieberman, Soledad Martinez, Circle of Security, all of those kinds of trainings really helped me to create a very concrete strategy where as soon as I say something negative, I think shift perspective. I am a self-talker, so I literally say to myself, shift perspective. And I'll say, wow, that person is having a hard day. I've used this example. I can't remember if I said this to y'all in November. There's somebody in my coffee. I go get coffee in town. Santa Fe people, I don't want you to know where I'm going, but I go to the certain place all the time. And there's one girl behind the register who's just rude all the time. Literally, I'm like, I like want to say negative things to her. Like I want to be that person. And I'm literally like, I live in this community. I come to this coffee place every day. How do I want to respond? Right? It's self-regulation in action. Thank you for all the amazing information. Okay, great. Or really to appreciate that there is water in the glass. I am nowhere near that strategy. Yeah, that is where I hope to get to, is just accept that there's water in the glass. All right.
So Mara, this might be a great time for us to talk about follow-up sessions.
I forgot. Thank you for saying
And
that.
I want to say first that, so today is day 1 of a 3-day symposium. We will be here again tomorrow from 11 to 1. The same link that you used to get in today, and we will be here again Thursday from 11 to 1. What we're about to talk about is in addition to that. So Mara asked that we be able to offer some follow-up sessions for people to be able to practice this. And why don't you talk about that, and then I can give dates.
Sure. So I train for a living. It's one of the things I do for a living. And what we know about trainings is that they only go so far in terms of supporting implementation. And so what I talked to Maya about was providing the opportunity to have some follow-up sessions to support you all in the implementation of these concepts that we're going to be talking about over the next 3 days. And so we're offering these 1-hour follow-ups where I'm not necessarily going to be training something, but I'm going to be holding time for people to come and say, I tried this strategy and it worked, or I tried this strategy and it didn't work. Can you help me with what to do next? Right? Well, I want to really dive a little deeper into some self-awareness stuff. Can you help me think of some things to do? So the follow-up is to support your implementation of the concepts that we're going to be talking about. Does that make sense to you all? So the structure of it is really open, and it will be an hour each time, right, Maya? We're going to do 3 1-hour sessions.
We're going to do 3 1-hour, and you're going to get this in an email with the link and everything. So this is just to give you a heads up. You don't need to worry about it, but it will be Tuesday, March 18th, Tuesday, April 1st, and Tuesday, April 8th from 11 to 12. You can come to one of those, any of those, none of those. You can come for part of the time and get your questions answered. You can stay for the whole thing and listen to other people too. It will be a very, as Mara said, a very open format, really to just support you in taking all of this great information. And instead of going, oh, I'm going to put that notebook over here, that was such good information, to actually bring it from, I think of it as bringing it from your head to your heart so that you're actually embodying it and using it on a daily basis. So we will be sending follow-up emails. You'll get all that information and the link.
Yeah. And the reminder about it is that it will flow based on what you bring to it, right? So just a reminder, I'm not necessarily going to be training anything. So what's required is for you to come with, I want to talk about this a little bit more, or I have a question, or I tried something, or can you remind me what you said, right? Because I think what Maya just said is really what happens, is that, oh, this was great, and I'm just going to go back to work now, and it gets put over here, and it's really easy to forget. And when we're talking about growth in this particular arena, it takes practice and it takes intention. And so we're providing some more opportunity for intentional growth. Yeah, so Maya just put that in the chat. Yeah. Right. Maya, anything else, or?
I think that's it. I was just putting this in the chat in Spanish. There we go. So I just want to, I don't think we have anything else of content wise, but I just want to thank everyone for making time for this incredible professional development, for being here, for sharing your experiences, for soaking it in. And we will see you back here again tomorrow. Remind me the topic of, what's the name of our topic for tomorrow?
I think tomorrow we're looking at behavior through a trauma-informed lens.
Oh, right. Behavior through a trauma-informed lens. This applies to everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. So I really hope you can make it again. If you have any questions, you can email us at firstbornandmore@sfcc.edu, and we will respond to you as soon as we can. Thank you, Mara. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, everybody. It was so good to be here with you. See y'all tomorrow.